Hey guys, over here for our Crime and Emergency Services in Japan playlist. We have actually talked about this at various times over the years, but what triggered this video is recently we released a myth video because there was a myth that someone was peddling that the reason that Japanese crime is so low is because citizens will drag criminals to the police station if they commit a crime, right? Which, most of you guys are familiar with Japan will know that's total nonsense. But having made that video, it seemed only reasonable or appropriate to then address what are the reasons? What are the reasons that the crime rates in Japan are so low? And until today, I'd only gone on what my own experience had been here. And I'll just give you a couple of really quick examples. One is, some of you might remember, I found a wallet. I pulled up at a set of traffic lights and I could see a wallet lying on the ground. So I picked it up and it had about 50,000 yen in it, so about $500, and credit cards and all sorts of stuff. And I took it to the police station and the owner turned up and he was really happy and it was all good, right? Which I think you'd agree most decent people in most countries would probably do the same thing, right? However, there was another day where my wife and my daughter were in a park, and my daughter found 500 yen, so that's like $5, right? It's a single gold coin, and it was lying in the grass in the park, and my daughter found it and showed my wife, and my wife said, right, we have to take it to the police station, right? So they went, the coal barn, there's a coal barn a little bit far from that park, and they'd actually go home, get in the car, and then drive to the coal barn, and the policeman had to fill out a long form, and which is what I had to do when I found that wallet too, quite a lot of paperwork. And then a certain amount of time, maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks later, nobody had claimed the 500 yen, nobody had reported the 500 yen missing, so the policeman called us and my daughter and wife went down and picked up the 500 yen and she could keep it, right? So the point is, it was my wife's automatic reaction. So for most of us, I think that wallet, the automatic reaction would be, yeah, take it to the police station. But a 500 yen coin lying in the grass in a park, how many people would take it to the police station and go through all the paperwork for that 500 yen? But it was just their natural reaction. Another thing that I experienced here, well, actually on that money thing too, there's like $30 million a year is handed in to the Tokyo police. So that's just Tokyo, right? The Tokyo prefecture. So every year, it's something like that. It's huge. I can't remember exactly, but it's like $30 million or something that's handed in every year, because Japanese people love dealing in cash, and the result of that is people lose cash all over the place, and people find it and take it to the police station. So it's a huge number. I should look it up before I post this video. So it's like $30 million every year or more. And then, so there's that, and then the other smaller example of Japanese honesty is the kids' homework comes complete with answers. So the teachers actually give them the homework and say, okay, do page 27 to 28, and either on another piece of paper or in the back of the textbook are all the answers, or sometimes even on the same page. So when I help my kids with their homework, sometimes there at the bottom of the page are all the answers. And they'll sort of put a piece of paper over them so that they don't have to accidentally notice them while they're doing the work. And it seems consistent that most Japanese kids they've got the answers there, but they don't use them. So it's just this. So this has been my own experience, and just the honesty. The other thing is, there's something about Japanese culture, because the focus is on the group rather than the individual. So, in a lot of societies, it's every man for himself, you've got to look after number one, all that sort of stuff. And my perception is that the result of that is that some people take that to an extreme, and that results in crime. Because if it's every man for himself and you've got to look after number one and everything else, and I see some money sitting on a counter, or I see an open window, and or I see a car with the keys in them, or something like that, if you take that to the extreme, that every man for himself, then I can take your car and I can steal your purse and I can rob your shop, right? That's just my own observation. So that's been my perception. The couple of decades that I've lived here, that's been the perception that I've had, that Japanese society is just about You know, the kids here, the people here just don't think about taking from someone else. They're just really innocent about it, you know. And often you'll see things of people just leaving valuable things all over the place. They're not giving it a second thought, you know. They're leaving the cars in the car park of the convenience store when they're going with the engine running and all that sort of stuff. Last time I had visitors here from Australia, I did that. It was winter, and you just leave the car running and you go in the convenience store, you know. And I got out of the car and just left it running and walked in, and they went, what's the story? What are you doing with the car? And it's all right, it'll be there when we come back. And of course it was. So that was just my observations and perceptions. But today I thought, okay, I've got to make a bit more effort, right, for you guys, because just my own observations and perceptions, in this case, I think it requires a little bit more. So I got on the internet and I was looking at, you got to skim past all the clickbait and rubbish, because there's a lot of that pops up when you search about crime in Japan, low crime rates in Japan, and all that myth peddling nonsense pops up. So what I did was I just focused on reputable institutions that had departments or people that had researched this properly, right, and looked at the results, and it seemed to be some common threads. I just made some notes here. Collectivism is a word I've never used, but it's that thing that I was just talking about, where the people think about the group. The other one that came up was group harmony. So the people think about the group. So the young guy that lives down the street feels like he's part of a community, and he's not going to think about spray painting the old man's fence or graffitiing on the old man's fence or stealing something out of the car, or the kids here we got kids in and out of our house all the time, and they're just focused on just doing their thing, you know. And when you go to places where there's lots of kids and adults and old people, and everybody's respectful, and it's just their society, it's just the way it's just what they think is normal. They don't realize there's alternatives, you know. I've talked to Japanese people here about my experiences with crime and law enforcement in Australia, and they can't believe some of the stories I tell them, because it's just like they've never heard of such a thing. You know, I can tell them one story after another of different experiences with crime and criminals in Australia. You know, they can't believe it, because in their life they just don't experience stuff like that. They don't think about it. You know, they don't think about it. So anyway, back on the what I found. The institutions talked about the reason for Japan's low crime: group harmony, collectivism. So it's all about the group. It's not about the individual. The disgrace was mentioned a few times at different things. They talked about the disgrace that if anybody here does the wrong thing, that they'd be ashamed of themselves. You know, even if people do the wrong thing here by accident, they feel ashamed of themselves. You know, so to intentionally do the wrong thing here, you know, for most Japanese people, and again, there are exceptions to all of this, because there is crime in Japan. That myth about there being no crime in Japan isn't true. Of course, there is crime in Japan, but it's very, very low numbers. Very, very low numbers. It was mentioned a couple of times about the in some of those reports about the strict gun laws in Japan. So we talked about that before in previous videos. You know, that nobody has guns, nobody wants guns. You know, the only people who want guns here are cops and hunters, basically the guys that have hunting licenses that hunt pigs and feral pigs and stuff like that. You know, they have rifles, and no one else has a gun or wants a gun. They don't want guns, and the result of that is 128 million people, and we average 1 or 2 gun deaths a year, and that's usually criminals shooting each other. So it's not usually innocent people the result of that. Usually it's criminals shooting each other, and it averages 1 or 2 gun deaths a year, you know, which is pretty good, isn't it? Community policing was mentioned lots of times. The Koban thing, they'll have cities and towns have a big police station. We're about to drive past one in a minute, actually. They have a big police station that's, you know, the police headquarters for the city or the town. And then they have the little Koban, which is just a little, we've showed you these before, they're just a little one-man operation that'll be, you know, in different little areas of the town. So there's coppers all over the place, basically. I'm not convinced. They kept talking about that in all these different reports as being one of the reasons the crime's so low. I'm not totally convinced that's a reason, because I'm not sure those guys make a difference. But the academics seem to think that plays a part. Oh, here's a big part. Low inequality and high stability. So you don't have that thing that in some countries, you've got homeless people who have no money and no prospects and their life's just terrible, living next to people who have lots of money. And of course, that inevitably is going to result in crime, isn't it? When you got people who have not much at all living right next to people who have lots of stuff, in a society where it's every man for himself, you're going to get crime, right? So that's a big point. In Japan, you don't sort of have that. I mean, we do have homeless people, but very, very small numbers of homeless people, and quite often it's by choice. They're just not dealing, they just can't deal with the stresses and strains of normal life, so they go and build themselves a little cardboard house under a highway somewhere. That's the police station on the right here, where that car's coming out and the policeman's standing on the footpath. Interesting piece of timing. So yeah, low eating. Oh no, it's not. That's the car shop next door. That's the police station. So low inequality. Well, that's obviously a big point, right? That if people have enough money to buy food and that sort of thing. Interestingly, on that point, some of the crime that we've been having the last few years has been from pensioners, because the pension here is really, really low. And so some of the crime that we've had the last few years has been pensioners stealing rice and stuff from supermarkets or convenience stores, because they're a bit short on money, so that's pretty tough. But again, the academics say it's the low inequality and high stability. Homogenous societies, I mean, that's part of it, I guess, is that the people here all think, most of the people here think along the same lines when it comes to this sort of stuff, and that results in low crime. So homogenous society. And discipline. And discipline was mentioned a few times in amongst that as well. The Japanese people are very disciplined, so controlling their behaviours and that sort of things. Conforming, strict gun control. The high conviction rate. Yeah, people talk about the high conviction rate all the time. And I made a whole video about this, that Japan has a 99% conviction rate. That sounds worse than it is, I suspect, because the conviction rate, that 99% conviction rate, is the conviction rate after people are charged, right? Which means that if police arrest you and take you into custody and question you, then it's not a 99% chance that you're going to be convicted, because you haven't been charged yet, right? You've only been questioned. So the conviction is, and so I suspect that their prosecutors, and we see this across Japanese society, they're really cautious about making a mistake, right? So the prosecutors here are going to be very hesitant to charge anybody with a crime if they're not convinced they can get a conviction. And I'm sure, I mean, the academics reckon that it's the fear of being convicted, that high conviction rate, that stops Japanese people from committing crimes. I doubt that. I really do. I'm not going to steal that because I might get put in jail. I'm not sure that conviction rate has anything to do with it. Because if you're innocent, right? If you're innocent, and they haven't got proof to convict you, then they're not going to charge you in the first place. So it's only if you really do commit. I'm just not convinced. Could be true. Anyway, what I'm supposed to be doing after giving you my observations is giving you, this is what the academics say. So the academics that have researched this properly and done it without any emotional involvement, allegedly, and this was fairly consistent across the board. This was, there was Japanese, I think it's Tokyo University, someone from Tokyo University, there was some international crime institution or something. It was all sort of reputable organisations, and these things kept coming up. The group harmony, the collectivism, the disgrace, the society, basically. That was the common thread. The Japanese society, the results of Japanese society being as it is, it results in low crime. So, not surprising. not surprising. You know, I would hold that as being the main reason, and that's what kept coming up in there. That was the common thread. Those other things about the 99% conviction rate and the gun control and that sort of stuff, that did seem to be less common in their reasoning, and that doesn't surprise me either. So, you know, it's the society, basically. That's the bottom line, isn't it? That's the short version, the short explanation. Why is there low crime in Japan? Is because Japanese society and the way Japanese people are brought up and the way they think results in people not committing crime very much. Rarely committing crime. So it doesn't surprise me at all. Nothing I saw there surprised me at all. There were a couple of things, you know, the community policing thing. I don't know. Maybe it makes a difference, but I'm not sure. I'm not convinced that a little police station down the road with one copper in it who drives around the neighbourhood now and again, I'm not convinced that's going to make much difference. But they say that contributes. That contributes to keeping the crime rate low. So, for whatever reason, the bottom line is that it makes it a really good place to live. It really does, where you can leave your car running outside the convenience store and it'll still be there when you get back. Anyway, that's more than enough of that. Why is Japan's crime rate so low? Hopefully we covered it all. More videos coming soon.